Hi everyone, Michael here with the Relentless Mind, the channel dedicated to breaking it down to build you back up and set you soaring on your path to success, wealth, and meaningful experiences. Now, here we will discuss the fourth element of elevation, which is the density, the environment that you operate in. Not all of us are in the same environment, so it is absolutely critical for you to understand this fourth element of elevation, and I will explain it best as I can to you to identify opportunities and set you up for a new path to elevation. First of all, a reality check. So your surroundings do not define opportunity. Opportunity is all around us. It's just up to us to identify it, and sometimes our mind is just not ready yet to understand what opportunity is. It's just something that we haven't seen yet, and we haven't built up our mind to identify it regularly. The more you get into self-employment, the more you understand that there's opportunities everywhere, and you just were blindsided by it. You were not capable of identifying it yet. Now, let's look first at the demand side of it. So there are needs within all of us humans, and those needs need to be fulfilled, and that creates a demand. That demand can then be exploited by a business owner or self-employed person like yourselves. So Maslow's pyramid is built up from the base with physiological needs. These are your most common basic needs, coming down to sleep, eating, and taking care of business, meaning going to the bathroom. But the higher you go up, the more it becomes self-evident that all the other steps have been fulfilled. For instance, when we are looking for safety at the second level, we no longer have the need for food. Imagine someone being dropped into the wilderness. The first thing that they need to find is food. Next up comes shelter. If they are starting to live for a long time in this environment, they at some point need to find a way of belonging in that environment. Hopefully they will find other humans to live together in that environment, meaning that there will be belonging. And in that group, you will start to try and build up esteem. Being well seen within the group is evidently something that we must build up in order to survive and thrive in that group. And at the end, that means that you also need to have self-actualization. It means that at some point you want to be someone that becomes something bigger than themselves. But you can't do that if you're hungry. So first up come those physiological needs that we all have. We all have to feed ourselves, we all have to sleep somewhere, and we all want to at some point feel safe. We don't want to be in danger all day, every day, or be living in a war zone, because that means we want to get out as soon as possible. And at some point when we are safe, we want to feel like we belong to a community, like we have friends, family, and that belonging evidently will translate itself later into esteem, and self-actualization comes down to someone like you watching this video right now, which there is also a market for. But it comes at a later stage in the pyramid. Moving on to the breakdown of needs, where do people actually spend money on? That is something that you have to identify in your direct surroundings. Again, it's not difficult to identify, you just have to look at the market. So look at the Maslow pyramid and identify, hey, these people are actually spending money on foods at such and such place. Or they are buying houses in this area. So all of these is something that you have to identify, and then identify with your current level. You have to identify your own level of equipment. What tools do I have in hand, and what is the problem that I can solve with these tools? And then plug it together and make it happen for yourself. But the environment is of course filled with people that complain and give you great ideas about what problems you can solve. But that does not mean that they will spend money on it. Just because I complain about something does not mean that I'm willing to give you a lot of cash just because you have a solution to that problem. And that means that you have to basically identify where the real struggles are. So again, to the pyramid, if we're hungry, we want to eat. But the food industry is vast. There's a lot under the sun, and there's a lot that you could do too. but you are competing with all the others. But if you identify where the real struggles are, where the real need for a solution is, that's where you basically can make the money. But before we get too excited, let's also consider that you are often geographically locked. You cannot just move from one place to another. Usually you can't, but if there is no possibility for you to make it happen in the environment that you are currently at, you have to do everything in your power to move out of that environment, as it's not finished yet. The story hasn't been completely written. You can get out of that environment. You just need to identify the proper steps to do it. So, can you relocate or work remotely is also an option. I, for instance, had to move out of Holland because the environment at that time did not give me any opportunities to further develop my career. And so I had no other choice but moving to another country and making it happen for me, which is why I have probably this weird accent. But I also am fluent in 5 languages, so I can make it now happen basically anywhere in Europe. Alright, let's move on to the negativity. Again, we are coming back to the negative anchors, but we have to really do this, guys. You need to remove the negative people all around you. If there's someone around you that is just dragging you and holding you back, you need to cut them out immediately. If you haven't watched the video on negativity anchors yet, please go and do it as soon as possible. Next up are the time wasters. As soon as you get into business and start to make something happen, there will be people that are wasting your time. It's just always there. There's no way to not get involved with time wasters, but there is definitely a way of cutting them out sooner rather than later. And then, of course, you have to focus on builders. Builders are people that are there to help you. They will not help you just because they are such great people. They just see a future where you guys are growing together. So these builders usually are at the same level as you, and you identify each other and basically help each other grow out of your environment. Now, these builders are sometimes very difficult to identify, but at some point you will encounter them. And it's only if you ask the proper questions and also try to understand other humans that you will be able to identify someone that actually can move you forward. And at the same moment, you have to try with different people. Not everyone is a builder, but if you don't try it out, you don't know which one will be. And maybe you miss out on an opportunity to be linked with one of those builders. So of course you need to understand the market. And the market is a vast landscape of moving particles, and there's money flowing left and right all the time. There's no way of understanding the market 100% and knowing exactly where it is heading, which is why the stock market is so difficult to play on, because it's just so much information being floated around all the time. No one understands the market at all times 100% of the time. But we can identify a niche and become expert in a very, very small part of the market. Now, once we do that, we basically have identified where money is flowing. So if there is money flowing in a certain part of the market, you should be there to capture that money. So we need to understand which industries are growing, not just the ones that are thriving, because thriving industries are basically saturated with other players, so you will have a lot of competition. But if you look at businesses that are thriving, those are the ones that you need to be competing in, because that's where it is easier to snatch up money. But don't reinvent the wheel. You don't have to come up with new inventions and create whole new markets to make it big. Be the one that takes what works and makes it simpler, faster, or better. You need to be able to identify a product or service and find a solution to the minimum problems that are in there. So for instance, if you are in the grocery industry, you need to identify how to make it more cost efficient to get the food to the customer. Or if, for instance, you are working in real estate, how can I build homes quicker in the environment that I'm currently in, because there's a high demand for housing? You don't need to reinvent everything, just make it better. Streamline the process. And that's how you can snatch up that niche and become someone that thrives in a certain domain, in a certain industry, and make it big. But don't try to reinvent things here. So we need to identify those opportunities, and you need to just look for the inefficiencies, poor service, or weak execution. Usually you have been exposed to that industry, you have some knowledge of what is going on, and you're wondering, why are we doing it this way? The way that I see it, it should be done like such and such. And then go out on your own and execute, because you have identified a weakness within that system which you can exploit and make it better for the customer, for the problem that you are trying to solve. And this is basically where it comes down to understanding that you have been capable of identifying something that is wrong and you are now trying to rectify it. But you're doing it on your own. You're not helping your boss growing better and faster. You are trying to snatch up that surplus value that you are basically developing here. But within every environment there is of course a legal landscape. We have to basically adhere to the regulations, the licensing or the taxes and barriers to entry. Now, regulations are all around us. They are the laws. They are the ones that tell us what we can and cannot do. And the licensing is the same in the sense that the laws dictate which types of products and services you can offer and which are basically not yours to offer because they belong legally to another identity. And then come the taxes, and this is where it usually goes wrong, so we will get into that now as well. And on the next step will be the barriers to entry, because most industries create these barriers together with all the players that are involved, basically creating a regulation, so then that becomes something that you need to acquire in order to become a player in that market. This comes down to having some sort of diploma, maybe a master's degree, what have you. In any case, it's all just about protecting that industry. And that barrier to entry could be also just money related. Perhaps you need to have a big bag of cash to get started in that industry. For instance, if you are a real estate developer, you might not have a large barrier of entry in terms of what kind of degree you need to have. The barrier of entry then becomes the cash. How do I get enough funding to build that property? So, identify your legal landscape. If you don't know, call up your local government and ask them the questions. Simple as that. And in the future, you will have to become very cost aware. So the example that I took here is that if you have an environment where the labor cost is really high, maybe you should avoid having a business which is very heavy on staff. Meaning that if you have, for instance, high labor costs in a country where you are trying to offer driver services, perhaps it's not the greatest business because it will cost you a lot of money to pay that staff before you can take out some cash for yourselves. Or if you are in a high rent space, maybe you should avoid physical spaces. So in a country where the rent is very expensive, like my own country, we basically want to avoid having too much physical space, and that's why we have mostly people working out there in the field. That way, their car becomes their office and they don't need to have a physical space to come to. Be smart when it comes to costs. So, entry strategy comes all down to how do I get started? Now, most of us don't just open a business and go at it. No, we first dabble our toes into the water, and that always happens by becoming self-employed. So start as an independent. That way you can keep the cost low and learn by doing. Because becoming a business immediately has a lot of legal implications in terms of accounting and so forth. So first, let's just try it out as being independent and then move to the next step, which is opening a business. Now, the reason why most businesses actually fail is because there's very, very poor financial management. And that all comes down to the lack of accounting knowledge, because most people make this mistake. We have someone that starts a business, let's say it's a restaurant. Money starts flowing in because we're starting to sell those dishes and we have drinks being sold. So we have a lot of cash flow coming in, but that cash flow is still linked with VAT. We have to pay that VAT. We cannot spend it. And this is where the mistake happens. We don't set it aside on a different account. We basically justify spending it as an investment for the future. We will pay that VAT bill later on. But at some point, there is no VAT anymore, or there is just not enough of it because you didn't do your accounting properly, because you don't have that knowledge yet. And this misuse leads to failure. Right, so let's just do it, guys. Don't hesitate anymore. It's time to do the execution. We will register our business, we will set up operations, and we will create an offer. Again, don't go into business immediately. First, try to be an independent. But we have to at some point execute. We cannot just sit around, have great ideas, and wonder if they will work or not. We have to actually get out there and make it happen for ourselves. So execute, execute, execute. If you don't sell, there is no income. I don't care if you do it on Amazon, in person, or on the phone. You have to follow some sort of sales course and understand what sales comes down to. I am a salesperson and I understand sales better than most. But you as a beginner have probably no knowledge about it. And that means that it will fail if you don't try to sell. Sell, sell, sell. No money comes in if you don't sell. And in order to sell, you need to do certain things, which is prospect. Prospect means that you are going out there looking for new customers. Whether it be online or in real life, you have to prospect. Prospect is exactly what it sounds like. It is you delving in the dirt looking for gemstones. And those gemstones are difficult to identify, and they will not just go, hey, nice to meet you. You know what? I'll give you a good cash for that solution that you have. No, they need to be convinced, meaning you need to follow up. You need to follow up and follow up with your customers. Turn them into long-term customers if you have to. And then close those deals. Just because you have given them the idea, made the multiple phone calls, does not mean that you are a closer. In the end, it all comes down to separating your client with their cash for your solution. If you can't do that, you are not a closer. And you have to learn this process. You have to learn the small, minute details that basically gets your product or your service sold. Now we can't just make empty promises. So once you have closed those deals, we have to deliver and give them results. Under promise, over deliver. And build then that trust. Because if you don't deliver on what you've promised, your lifeline, so your clients, will basically die out. And your clients are the blood that runs through your financial vein. If you don't have any more clients and you have not been able to build any trust, there will be no repeat and grow. There will be only vanish and be gone forever. So deliver results, build that trust, and repeat it over and over again and grow out of this environment that you're currently in and build something new. Now the final message here is that elevation is a decision. Everything you have learned here has come down to taking decisions. You are watching this video for a very good reason. You want to get better at it. And you are only going to be able to do that if you decide today and then execute over and over and over and over again. If a business idea fails, don't hesitate to try again with a different one. You have learned something new. Those sales skills are not gone. Closing those deals and having those contacts makes it viable for you to start over again. But again, make the decision now and execute endlessly and relentlessly. Now I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a little thumbs up and subscribe to the channels, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video.